Morning, everybody. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. We thought it was really crucially important today that we stood here together with a united voice. We condemn unequivocally the reckless attacks on Dunmurry Police Station on Saturday. That was a very serious incident, put people's lives at risk, very dangerous, and showed a real blatant disregard for the local community. So our thoughts, first and foremost, are with the delivery driver who was put in such an extremely terrifying ordeal, to all the residents that were forced to leave their homes, to all the officers that were impacted and those that responded to what developed. I think it's with real relief that we're standing here today and no one was seriously killed or injured, but that doesn't take away for a second from the seriousness of what has occurred on Saturday evening. So our focus has to be remaining to build stronger, safer communities, and that's what we will continue to work towards. So to all those that are responsible for what happened on Saturday evening, I say get off the backs of communities. We will not accept being dragged backwards. Those responsible for this selfish act have nothing to offer our society. They must be held to account, and I would urge anyone with any information to bring it forward to the PSNI.
I am absolutely appalled by the terrorist attack on Saturday night directed at the PSNI. I utterly condemn those attacks and indeed all of those behind them. It is vitally important that we send a very clear message this morning that we stand shoulder to shoulder in clear and unequivocal condemnation of this attack. These acts of terrorism are as wrong today as they were in the past, but it is a demonstration that there are still those within our society that want to drag us back to the past. It is also a warning that we cannot be complacent in relation to our national security. We need to give the PSNI not just our clear condemnation of these attacks, but our full support. And we do have a clear message to those that are behind these attacks. Go away, you are not wanted. The Northern Ireland that we are trying to build, that better and brighter future for everyone from all communities. This type of violence, this type of terrorism has absolutely no part to play in the Northern Ireland of today or the Northern Ireland of tomorrow.
As Chairman of the Northern Ireland Policing Board, I condemn the cowardly act of violence that our society experienced on Saturday evening. It was a miracle that no one was injured, not just the police officers but the residents that lived opposite the police station. And I commend the bravery of the police officers who rescued those residents, bravery that stands in stark contrast to the cowardice of those that forced the delivery driver to bring a device and park it outside the police station. In my 3 years as an independent member on the Policing Board, I have been struck by the humanity and dedication of the men and women who wear the uniform of the Police Service of Northern Ireland. Picking up on the issues where society's other frameworks of support have failed, issues arising from poverty, mental health, drug and alcohol abuse. These people responsible for the attack on Saturday evening need to realise that society has moved on. Policing has moved on. It now operates with a democratic mandate, is community-focused and within a human rights framework. Such acts of violence have no place in a society committed to peace, as expressed in support of the Good Friday Agreement. These are the actions of the schoolyard bully, who, when they don't get their own way, resort to violence. And its only achievement is to divert scarce policing resources away from the people who need them most. We all have a part to play in supporting the work of the police. And it's important that we stand here together, united in our condemnation of what happened on Saturday evening. And I would urge anyone with information to contact the police on 101 or anonymously through Crime Stoppers.
Thank you. Firstly, I want to thank the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister for inviting us here to Parliament buildings to speak to you about this issue. I'll begin by condemning the reckless and dangerous attack at Dunmurry on Saturday night. This is the second such attack in less than a month. My thoughts are with the delivery driver, as colleagues have mentioned, of those local residents who had fear brought to their doors, but also to the incredible brave police officers who rushed towards danger to make sure they evacuated those residents from the harmfulness of this device. We've commenced an attempted murder investigation which will be led by our Terror Investigation Unit, and we are at the early stages of that investigation. But this will not deter the PSNI, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, which is an incredible organisation, from doing what it's here to do, and that is protect our communities. This attack will achieve absolutely nothing but unified condemnation by everybody and the arrest and prosecution of those responsible. This was a deliberate, reckless and stupid attack that endangered so many people's lives. The coercion of an innocent delivery driver and the placing of an explosive device in a residential area shows complete disregard and stupidity, the danger that this brought to so many people's doors. And this was not just an attack aimed at our incredible police officers and staff. This was an attack against all of us, against you, against everybody in society. These mindless idiots risked the lives of not only local residents, but included 2 young babies. They were being taken into the safe custody of the police station by our courageous officers who ran to this vehicle, by the vehicle, and to residents' houses to protect them. I want to acknowledge especially the courage and professionalism of those officers who responded so quickly and so professionally to this cowardly attack and undoubtedly saved lives. It's everybody's responsibility to call out these reckless attacks, and that's why we stand here today, shoulder to shoulder in doing that. There is no place for these mindless thugs, these idiots, who thinks it's acceptable to carry out such stupid attacks. I can promise you we will use all of our resources to identify them and bring them before the courts. And I want everybody to remember this: an attack on the PSNI is an attack on everyone, on all of us. Again, I'll appeal with anybody with any information about the people responsible to please, please, please contact us before these people actually harm or kill somebody. Please contact us if you know something. Even if you think you might know who's responsible, please, please, please reach out to the PSNI before they actually do kill somebody. And I think we're probably now happy to take questions. Thank you.
Well, firstly, I think the strongest message that those responsible need to hear from right across society, from every political stripe, from us 4 standing here together, is that we are absolutely united in the condemnation of what has happened. Nobody wants to see this on our streets. Nobody wants to see the fear that that community experienced on Saturday evening, or that the officers were put their own lives in danger in terms of trying to support the families across Saturday evening. So I don't think this is a day for political nonsense. I think this is a day for strong condemnation. This is a day for us to be united in saying these groups have no place in our society, and it's a day for us all to say collectively that anybody with any information whatsoever should come forward to the PSNI, because these people need to be dealt with before the courts.
Look, I think it's really important that we do stand very strongly together, that we send very clear messages. Yesterday afternoon I was up in the Dunmurry area to show my solidarity and my support to the local community. We know that for many people they haven't experienced this for such a considerable period of time. That is very welcome. But sadly, this visited upon them on Saturday night. People will feel very apprehensive about that. It's a mixed community, many people feeling upset, understandably, and apprehensive. And I want to, first of all, give my full assurance to the community that we will stand with them. And of course, there is, I think, a responsibility on all, across all of the political parties, particularly at a leadership level, to be sending a very clear message, a condemnation of this terrorist attack on Saturday night, but indeed a very clear condemnation right across the piece. Terrorism is always wrong. It is always without justification. Should that have been 10, 20, 40, 50 years ago or on Saturday night? Let's send that clear message. Let's send that clear leadership, particularly to our young people coming up, that this is absolutely not the future. It is not our present. It is not wanted, and we need to stand together against that.
So firstly from me, can I just say the fact that we're here and we're speaking collectively about how awful, how wrong this attack was, that is the message from today. That's the absolute message for everybody in Northern Ireland to know that we are all entirely against this. Churches, civic leaders, local councillors, political leaders, everybody is against this nonsense, and it has got to stop. The next thing around the support for the PSNI, I've made very clear since I arrived, I think the organisation has not received the support that it deserves, that our men and women deserve, from a whole host of different people, because they are remarkable. How can it be right that people do not think policing's for them because of an ongoing distant Republican threat, as exemplified by what's happened in the last month? That's not normal. We've got to all come out to make sure that we don't just call this out when we've got a press conference, but we call it out day and daily. How can it be that people who think they want to join the PSNI from nationalist communities have to move home? Some of their friends turn their backs on them. And I meet these officers. And I've met so many people from the nationalist community, 2 families last week, who I have to tell you, it was humbling and emotional to meet them, who have experienced the most awful, unimaginable criminal activities against members of their families and cannot speak highly enough of what the Police Service of Northern Ireland have done for them. We've all got to make sure that we move this society forward, and we've got to call out this nonsense against policing. And this, I'm so delighted, is part of us doing that. But we all know, including the PSNI, we've got to tell our story far better than we have, and we've all got to confront this issue to move away from these awful dark days that these people are trying to bring back to us.
Look, I think that when you think about where we are today, 28 years past the Good Friday Agreement, all of my adult life has been about building the peace. All of my adult life has been cementing the Good Friday Agreement and making politics work for people. That remains my resolve. In 2 years we'll celebrate 30 years, and my goodness, our society has been absolutely transformed for the better. And we are the custodians of that peace. That's why those people that are responsible, I call them out on every turn, not just at this podium today. These people do not have a place in our society. They're not supported by people in the main in our society. And I say no to their actions, and I say no to them dragging us back to the past. I want a brighter and better future for people. I don't want the families of Dunmurry or anywhere else to experience the dark days of conflict. So I think that what's important is the political leadership of today continues, that we continue to drive our peace process forward, that we reach towards the celebration of the Good Friday Agreement as a really positive thing, and that we tell these people to get off the backs of their communities. No groups should be existing in 2026. No groups should be working in communities, putting their feet on the neck of communities, actually, in many cases. So I condemn that wrongly across the board every day. I can't speculate about that. I think it's even fair to say that the intelligence didn't even suggest that this was something that was happening. I can't answer to that. But I will say this, that if these people think that they're going to make a name for themselves by attacking communities to advance Irish unity, that's not the case. People want to bring that about democratically. People want to bring that about as per the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. That's what I'm committed to. I believe that's what the vast majority of people are also.
So I'm never happy with the support that the police get from any different parts of society here, because I think that we have been let down by so many people. Often, and policing is a lightning rod for society here, we hear claims of two-tier policing because we do one thing one way and another thing another way, which we don't. A lot of that, I think, has got to stop. I am taken back to the Patton Commission report, and in that report, Chris Patton said that it was incumbent on all leaders, all political leaders, all local councillors, all bishops, all priests, all teachers, all sporting authorities to do everything they can to stop discouragements against policing and to encourage young people to join the police service of Northern Ireland. What I can say in my time here, I am delighted with the progress that we've made. I do feel I'm being supported now financially, but that financial support has got to continue, because the best way to deal with these issues is to have a police service that is resourced to deal with them. And we haven't got that. We are desperately below the numbers we need. But recently, we've received that support in what is an incredibly difficult financial situation that the executive faces. But I would ask everybody to make sure that they recognise and understand the work of the PSNI. And I'll finish by saying that includes the media. I often see reports that I simply don't recognise from events that have been dealt with by the Police Service of Northern Ireland, including incredibly successful investigations and prosecutions. Just give us a fair hearing. And what I will say to finish the answer, many of you will know that today we launched this new Fly on the Wall programme that we've done with the BBC, Peelers, the PSNI for Real. I am hoping that young people will see that programme and think, I want to be that officer, from nationalist backgrounds, loyalist backgrounds, backgrounds from all of our new and emerging communities, because policing is the finest public service you can do. We keep people safe quietly, discreetly, without accolades, in ways that other public services haven't got a responsibility to do. But I do feel here in Northern Ireland, for reasons that you all understand, that story is not celebrated enough, and I think we all need to do more.
Just if I can briefly come in to say, look, I believe that I have given, without any reservation, full support to the PSNI. My party leader feels the same, because we do feel that this is an issue of political leadership. Of course, there will always be questions, legitimate questions, that are asked through the policing board by political parties on specific policing operations, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give that very strong support to the PSNI. The rule of law is at the very heart of any society. It not just upholds those laws, but it protects citizens across every community throughout Northern Ireland. We have pushed very, very hard from a party perspective to try to get the right resources for the PSNI as well. And I do think this comes down to an issue of leadership. If there are issues with the PSNI going into schools, going into particular areas, then we need to see the political leadership in those local areas making it very, very clear that it is somewhere that the PSNI should be able to come into freely, because the PSNI is there to protect absolutely everyone, no matter what your community background.
We have to change it. That's not normal. And by the way, and I'm constantly reminded of this, we have made huge progress. We must never forget that. We have made enormous progress over the last 25 years, the life of the PSNI. Our anniversary is this November, since the Good Friday Agreement. Sometimes we don't see that. My concern is that we do actually now need to refocus our energies to make sure that we don't become complacent. But we can change those mindsets. I was in a school in West Belfast, very close to actually where the car was hijacked on Saturday night, and it was an incredible visit. And some of those children have views about policing that I still find it hard to understand. But we need to help those kids understand what policing is really about. We want those kids to become police officers in the future. So we can make the differences that need to be made. And I think this is a sign that we all intend to do that.
The only thing I would add is just to say that I think we need to remember that those responsible are a minority in society. There are a small number of people with small amount of support, but that's why it's really, really important that wider society hears today that united message of condemnation, that none of us want to see this in our society, and that those people responsible need to be held accountable. So it is really important that anybody with any information comes forward and provides that to the PSNI so that they can do their job.
And certainly when I was speaking to people in the local area, there was that aspect of apprehension, understandably. And I think it is that reassurance that this, as already said, this is a very small number of people. It is a minority of people. And I honestly believe that this does require a very robust policing response, but that is of course why the PSNI does need to get that proper resourcing, particularly in relation to counter-terrorism, and again that we send a clear message to the Prime Minister, to the UK Government, that there is no room for complacency when it comes to national security and tackling terrorism here in Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, while it may be a minority, it is still an ongoing issue, and that requires that additional support, not just from the Northern Ireland Executive, but by the UK Government and the Prime Minister.
So if I can start with regards to new IRA, listen, the numbers are really small. That's already been said by colleagues at the podium. But they still are of a number that causes a huge concern. And don't forget, in recent years, the criminal justice successes, so many people are either facing trial or have been recently convicted for terrorist attacks in Northern Ireland. We've had huge success. But we are not complacent. The fact that this device detonated, we've always worked on the premise that a lot of the sophisticated and technical capability that we used to face from terrorists has dissipated. But we cannot and we will not be complacent around our response to this group. We need to respond with everything we've got, and I can tell you now I had a meeting last night with the investigation team. We will make sure that we identify those responsible, we'll arrest and we'll prosecute those responsible. Because there's only one place they should be in our society, and that's in prison. And you know, I said something yesterday to some colleagues. If the family members of the people responsible for these attacks are subject to any sort of awful criminality online, their children are attacked by paedophiles, their elderly relatives are subject to these organised crime scams where they lose their whole life savings, we will go after the people who commit those crimes as we would for anybody. We'll arrest them and we'll put them in prison. We're here for everybody. We're here for every community. The best way to deal with these people is to make it clear to them that this is a society of equality, of fairness, and there's no place for them in it whatsoever, not when they commit crimes like this.
And I think it's really, really important to drive home a message. This is not all young people in society. This is not you know, the work or the ugliness of all young people or all young Republicans out there in society. I just came from our party conference over the weekend. Thousands of young people were there. They were engaged. They were talking about the future. They were energetic about the type of society that they want to build. So I think that those comments that you reflect show just how out of touch I think the SDLP can be with communities. Look, we come from a very complicated and difficult past, and you have to create space for people to be able to remember their dead and to do so with dignity and respect. And I think we can do those things whilst also working towards building a brighter and better future. So these actions of those responsible for Dunmurry do not reflect the wider cohort of young people out there, and I do not want to see young people all tarred with that brush.
I think from my perspective, just very simply, there cannot be the space for mixed messages. There just can't be. I think we need to have that clarity, we need to have a clear message, and people need to step up and send a very, very clear leadership for our young people right across, no matter what community that they come from. Well, I think it does need to be very high on the agenda, and certainly in relation to the events on Saturday night, I welcome the fact that deliberate interference. So, yeah, look, it absolutely has to be high on the agenda of the Prime Minister, and that's why we are sending a clear message. My party leader yesterday, I've said it repeatedly here today, that look, there cannot be complacency when it comes to national security. There are certain aspects of that lie at a Northern Ireland level, but there are big aspects of that lie also at a UK level with the Prime Minister and the UK Government. And I think it's important that we keep emphasising that we do need that additional support when it comes to counter-terrorism, when it comes to that additional resource. That does need to be recognised. It doesn't matter if it is politically inconvenient, it is a reality. And we would ask the Prime Minister and the Government to take an objective view to this, to give the resources and support that is required. And of course that's why we are also here. It is on us as well to make sure that the Prime Minister and the UK Government is aware of these issues. We have raised it a number of times in terms of proper resourcing and support for the PSNI, and I certainly will continue to do so.
And like in the draft budget itself, we have prioritised policing numbers, and the Chief Constable has acknowledged that. And we did that because we want to have a good policing service here that's reflective of the community it serves, and that people want to work with the police service itself. So we think that demonstrates our commitment. But like, it was very important yesterday in the aftermath of this happening that all parties were united, that everybody was on the one message in terms of condemnation. I welcome the fact that that is obviously the case. And we have that message. I think, again, I highlight this is a minority of people that want to drag us backwards. None of us are interested in that. We want societies to flourish. We want people to live in peace. The peace was hard won 28 years ago, and it's something that we need to hold on to with both hands.
So I welcome the fact that the PM did put out a message with regards to condemning what happened, as did the First and Deputy First Minister, the Justice Minister and so many other people. What I would say, one of the real challenges for the PSNI is we inherited the liabilities of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, but we did not get any support for doing that financially. And we are still, I think, in a position where almost every week you as media will report on a legacy case. A lot of those cases feed into the narrative of these distant Republicans. It's not helping that we haven't got the resources, that we're not supported to deal with those legacy cases. And in my view, that burden, that responsibility, that support sits with Westminster when there's direct rule. So we need support in dealing with legacy, with all the civil cases that we've got, so that we can deal with them quickly and fairly and properly. Because when we can't do that, because we don't have the resources, it looks as though the PSNI has been obstructive. And I can promise you, with my history with legacy, we are not. We are trying to resolve cases, but we don't have the actual resources to do it. And I keep trying to have this conversation with Westminster. They're doing a huge amount around this new Legacy Commission with investment, but they should be taking a whole systems approach and looking at the PSNI as much as they look at the Legacy Commission to make sure that we can address legacy in a way that's fair to those families. This earlier, we've in the last handful of years with regards to distant Republicans and their ambitions to attack not just policing but society. So a number of people are facing a criminal justice process now. It is absolutely right to say that we didn't have any indication that these two attacks were going to happen. That, I'm afraid, is the reality of seeing an intelligence work. It's an imperfect world. Sometimes you do get information, sometimes, unfortunately, you can't stop everything, you don't. What I can assure you of is that we are working tirelessly to get ahead of this now, to understand who is responsible for this, who motivated them to do it, who actually deployed the attacks. That is my absolute commitment to everybody here. That's what the PSNI will do.
Look, there's no surprise to the wider electorate out there that we are diametrically opposed in terms of our outlook. Even the arrangement that we have here, the executive arrangement, 4 parties, 4 different positions. So you're going to have political differences on an ongoing basis. But I think the knack in all of this is about how do you manage and deal with those challenges and those differences. But there are moments when you need to stand together. There are moments whenever you need to stand, and this is one of those such moments, because where we need universal condemnation, where we need to say to any group out there that exists that we don't want to see you about this place, no one here wants to see you about this place, you have no support here. But what we have to demonstrate to the wider public is that politics works. Despite the challenges, despite the limitations, politics can work. That's what I'm focused on, and I think that's what today is about.
From my perspective, I, along with my colleagues in the DUP, are really focused on making Northern Ireland work, driving down inefficiency, making our public services work for the people we serve, driving that improvement across all of the departments. And of course that means scrutiny. That means calling out when we disagree in a particular direction. It perhaps means not going forward with ideas or proposals that we think would be bad for Northern Ireland, because we want to see a strong and thriving Northern Ireland in the future. Yes, it's a 4-party coalition. That means that we're priority in the programme for government. I think we want to see that improvement in public services. We're not always going to. It requires working together, it requires grown-up politics, it requires trying to build consensus. We will not achieve that all of the time, and I think on the political issues, constitutional issues, of course there will be things we disagree with. Michelle and I come from very different perspectives across the political agenda, and we do that, but I do believe that we should focus on improvements in health and education and supporting policing, trying to make sure our public services work, that they are properly resourced, and importantly that we are driving that efficiency right across, because as I often say, it's not just about how much money we get here in Northern Ireland, it's about how we are using that, and that we're using it in the best possible way, working together, and that's what I focus on day in and day out.
Thank you.